Good evening, listeners. It's evening here, but it is morning for Lisa Gerrard. Um, I'm talking with her over the podcast today. Many of you, I don't know if you'll recognize the name, but you definitely will recognize her voice. She's done a lot of vocals for several movie soundtracks. One of my favorites is Now We Are Free from Gladiator. She has a beautiful, deep, resonant voice. So she's used in several different films as a vocalist. Um, and I wanted to talk with her today and just get to know her as a person. She's from Australia, so for her, it's like I think like 9 a.m. over there right now. Um, Lisa, to kind of start, first of all, thank you for taking the time because I know you're busy.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor.
Well, Lisa, to start, do you, how do you feel about how your career has gone? Do you really enjoy the work that you do? Is this what you thought you would be doing? Is it kind of gone the way you thought it would?
No, of course, it's been full of surprises. Yes, I mean, when I started out, I played piano, accordion, and Chinese dulcimer, and I
Hmm,
was I started out much younger in the family home, but the thing is that I started to play in venues um,
okay.
on the street at around about 16. And I that's when I was really beginning to develop my musical life. Before that, it was just really just singing in the lounge for my father's friends, etc. Because I come from an Irish background, you understand. My mother's English, but my father's Irish. And so, of course, Sunday was sort of mass, the local football, and then, people would go back to someone's house and have something to drink or lots of tea or,
Yeah.
depending on the situation. And there was always poetry and singing. So, and some of the singing was in Shunos, and I also grew up in an Arabic area. So I think that these two things influenced my singing style, and I realized to be moved by music that it was uh, necessary for me to unlock um, an abstract voice. It wasn't that intellectual at the time, but I knew that in order for me to really express my emotions, that if I was to sing in words or English, it in some way hindered, it created a practical side
Hmm.
to my that I wasn't really interested in at that point in time. I felt that the emotion and the emotive context of what I was doing was more was automatic and had a greater release of emotional tissue
When did
with.
did you just start singing vocally, like
Well,
making
I've always
guttural deep sounds, or was it just one day
no, no,
you
no.
know?
I think I just I sang from the time I cannot remember. I was always singing. Apparently, as a baby, I was always singing as well. So um, it's always been there. But when you grow up in a household where singing is a way of, it's part of life, you're not handicapped by a lack of confidence because it's like having, speaking two languages in the same home.
Hmm.
You know, it's just something that's always been there and is there, and you slip in and out of it effortlessly because it's who you are and part of your infrastructure. So, that's always been there. But I mean, the fact that I didn't sing words was, I think that probably was liberated through the fact that I grew up in this Arabic area where I couldn't understand what they were singing, but it certainly moved me. I loved the music and loved the singing from a very early age.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of Greek music also in this area.
Hmm.
A lot of Italians lived in this area. So it was an immigrant area. My parents were immigrants in Australia, so they moved to an area full of immigrants. And yeah, so, and then the Chanel singing in the home, because of course I was in Gaelic. So it never really occurred to me that I had to sing in in a structured language to express singing. So I think it probably, I don't really know, but I think it probably was these things that formed um, my ability to open the gateway of the heart to abstract sounds and song forms.
You know, it's so interesting because I have to agree with you, and I don't know why, but listening to rhythmic music and just music that is chanting, but also it just sounds so natural and like it invokes something in the heart that words don't always do. And I've never understood why that is because I'll find myself listening to, soundtracks where there's not words, there's just sounds, or maybe there's words, but it's like in a language I don't understand, but it feels like I understand it. Um,
Well, musical instruments don't have words and they move you. And the thing is that when you start, I find that if I have to think when I sing, I don't sing with the same emotion. I'm singing with my brain.
hmm,
And when it's a practical side of the work, and it's wonderful. And I love to hear singers that sing in English. And I've sung in English sometimes. I have sung pieces of music in English. And it's interesting. It depends on the piece, because there's a different language inside every piece of music. It's always interesting that you find a vernacular that is almost innate within the piece of music that you just pick out. It's already in there.
hmm,
And which is why there are with the singing that I do, there are lots of different languages, lots of
yeah.
different singing. Um, and if you sometimes they cross-pollinate. There are words that show up, or shapes of words that show up in different pieces frequently. I don't censor those. I don't try to stop them. Um, in some way, they have a right to be here, and I don't try to avoid them. I don't think when I sing. It comes from, some people say it comes from a higher self or something when you do this kind of work, when you improvising with musical instruments, etc.
Hmm.
Or in many forms of creativity, it comes from a higher self, that it doesn't come from the practical self, it comes from the intuitive self.
So
And
maybe more like soulful kind of thing.
yes, I would use the word soulful. A lot of people say spiritual. I find that really tricky to sort of say spiritual because I don't think it, I'm not sure if, I don't think it's spiritual. I believe it is soulful. I believe it's very human. It comes from a human, um, abstract. Spiritual for me is something completely different. So
Hmm.
it's tricky, but I think it's one of those things. It's like the word narcissist at the moment. Everybody's using this word, and I don't think half of the people that use it even know what this really means, because you don't go
Yeah.
around calling someone a narcissist unless you really understand what this word means, because it's a very, very strong demeanor, and
Yeah.
you can't just band it around. But these words become fashionable, and something like spiritual, it is quite fashionable. And when you really ask people, what does spiritual mean to you? What is spiritual? They can't answer, you know.
It's true.
And
Yeah.
you think, well, why are you using that to describe my work when you don't even know, you
Hmm.
can't describe what it is. And my work is not a dictionary description of spirituality. It's not. So you can't say, well, that's spiritual,
Yeah.
because, you know, how is it? How is it spiritual? You
I
know,
gotta say that's very interesting because I mean, you seem to have a deep respect for words and what they mean. You want them to be used in the right context, which is important. And like you said, it's not really trendy to do that. You use words that suit whatever it is you're trying to say, even if you don't really know what you're trying to say. Um,
mm.
but for you, when you mean spiritual, when you say it, what does it mean for you?
Well, when I'm having a deeply spiritual moment is usually when I pray.
Okay.
I disappear momentarily. I become completely uh, like I'm somewhere else
Hmm.
and feel a very strong sense of um, connection to something greater, something to everything, to things, nature, or this to me, this is a spiritual moment when I feel a spiritual connection, perhaps with a person or an animal, a spiritual connection that is abstract and very powerful.
Hmm.
A com like it's, I mean, some people can say, well, that's love, but when it's deeper than love, when it's something that opens up the pathways of the the mind and the heart
Yeah.
and your physical being all at once, and you are a receiver of things, and you're extremely sensitive at this moment. I mean, you can describe when you're improvising the singing and stuff like that, that you do get into this kind of state, but singing is different because it's kind of like if you have to improvise with something, if someone puts a piece of music in front of you and says, oh, here, I want you to do something with this, then there is a combination of uh, subtlety and anxiety.
I
It's
would
not
think.
spiritual. You're never anxious when you're having this spiritual prayer, when you feel that you are slightly levitating into this open where your body is insignificant. You are not in this condition. You're anxious, and yes, of course, your receivers are open because the piece of music is moving very quickly, and you have to go ahead of it intuitively.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's almost sometimes it's like sticking your finger into an electrical socket. This current of electricity comes through you, and it's actually causes anxiety. And it's something that you don't really want to go back. You
Hmm.
sort of do it, but you don't want to do it again. You don't want to keep going back to this, but you have to go back because this is the work, this is what you do. So there is an element of physical anxiety connected to the work, definitely, I think, for everyone. But
Hmm.
then once you find the place that unlocks what you're doing, then you can find some peace
Hmm.
in that. But the initial um, moment of unlocking is or pre-unlocking is anxiety, and
Yeah.
often can be exhausting.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, it's different. It's different. But anyone who does anything creative, and I say all people, will probably know this. It's just, that I do it. I'm asked so many times what's going on that I've had to make an effort to explain. But I think we are all aware of this condition in any context. I mean, even if you're, flying around the house, cleaning and cooking and, getting everything organized, there is this thing that comes into you that you go into a zone, and it's kind of anxious, but you're achieving things, and it's
Yeah.
something like that.
I totally get it. Yeah. Do you,
Anyway.
well, I know you mentioned earlier Mass. When you're praying, are you still a Catholic as your family was, like the
No,
heritage, or?
no, I'm not involved in any religions.
Okay.
And I don't want to demean other people's relationship with their religions, because I think it's really important
Sure.
for everyone to have their own personal thing. I have a very strong spiritual relationship. I believe in God. I believe that Jesus died on the cross. I love the philosophies of Christ. I know that the word Christian means to take on the philosophies of Christ. It's a tall order to take on the philosophies of Christ, but we can only attempt this. I remember somebody came back from a Buddhist meeting once, or I was doing a concert in Melbourne, a little one, and these people, they'd been to see the Dalai Lama. Something he said really struck me.
Mm.
that to them. I said, "How did you go?" I couldn't go because, of course, I had to do I was curious about this Dalai Lama. I was curious to see what this person had to say, but I couldn't go because I was setting up for this little concert. And the people came, and they were really disappointed. They were really, and I thought, wow, this is interesting because I would have thought they would have been sort of levitating with some kind of, spiritual enlightenment. And I said to one of them, "What happened?" And she said, "Oh, look, it was kind of heavy. And she said, he said to us, spirituality to you people is like, licking a piece of paper and sticking it on your arm. It blows off in the first breeze.
Mm.
And it was such an interesting, heavy comment. And he said, you're just here because we're fashionable. To Buddhism is to you, it's cool. It's cool. And he said, you have the philosophies of Christ, but you don't want those because, the philosophies of Christ are clothed in all this heavy, dusty religiosity. But if you wanted to, you could find, he said, and so is Buddhism. He said, but if you wanted to, if you really wanted to unlock enlightenment, you would be interested in all philosophies, and especially the philosophies of Christ, but that it's 100% available to you at your fingertips, but you're not interested in those because it's old and it's boring to you.
Mm.
So
Mm.
why do you expect to get and he really gave them a brushing down, which was kind of interesting. I was surprised, but yeah, I don't know why we're talking. Oh, yes, about religions. And yeah, so, I'm curious about anything that gives enlightenment. I am filled with the Holy Spirit. I had a spiritual experience of receiving the Holy Spirit, which was also being given a prayer language, which I then realized was completely different to my singing. And some people say, oh, but it's charismatic. She's singing in tongues and this. No, it's completely different.
Mm.
So yeah, so I can clear up that myth immediately. Um, because I read that a lot and I think, I wish they would do a little more research with this stuff because it's not true.
Well, it
But
seems like something very intimate.
it is very good, and anyone can have this. It's just a matter of making that connection, and it's a love connection and surrender to your love and openness, and this prayer language will come. And it's really something that it's like a meditation for me. If I feel stressed or if I have something troubling me and I go away and pray and I find I am like relieved of the pressure of this terrible thing. The way that I thought described it really well was when Aboriginals are grieving, they make a fire and they stand in the smoke of the fire. And this smoke
Mm.
um, takes away anxiety and the sense of grief. And when they walk out of the smoke, they feel really light and like that it's helped a lot to relieve the grief. And it's interesting because when you smoke something, you kill the bacteria, and it has this preservation kind of property. And its prayer is like that. It's like smoke. It's like some kind of abstract purification of the things that weigh the spirit down. You understand? So it's similar to it's the same as standing in the smoke.
Well, I want to ask you because I definitely pray, but I can't always say, and a lot of times I bring my anxieties, I pray. Like you, I believe in Christ, I pray. And sometimes I'll finish praying, well, a lot of times, and I still feel the anxiety, but I know that I've prayed about it, so I have that rest of mind, but at the same time, the feelings haven't necessarily changed. So I'm very intrigued by the fact that you mentioned, okay, I was really anxious, but I pray and then that feeling goes away. Does that happen to you all the time?
Um, it depends on the situation, depends on the problem. I find that prayer helps you to focus.
Yeah,
And a lot of anxiety is because of a lack of focus, because you're all over the place and you're confused and you're jumping from this to that to this and freaking out.
yeah.
And I find that if you pray and you pray, it's not just a 2-minute thing. Sometimes you have to pray. It depends on the problem. Sometimes fasting and praying is effective, very effective. Praying with another person is even more effective. Sitting together and praying in the spirit is extraordinary. And to come out of that prayer, you almost have to wrench yourself out because you just want to stay there. It's so enriching.
Mm.
But I believe that I would advise you to pray with another person and pray, for as long as you feel like. Don't put any restrictions on this. And fall into the vapor. No, the vapor, a prayer is like a vapor. It's like incense, and it creates this extraordinary vapor. And if you fall into this vapor, you can remain there for quite a long time, come out the way the smoke has
Mm.
purified the bacteria of your problem, that is obviously deeply entrenched in you.
You,
Anxieties come back. A lack of focus always comes back. It's not, I don't say you pray and it's a cure, like it's a miracle cure, but it's definitely a panacea,
I
definitely
see.
something to help you to survive some of the horrors of being alive, in this world and bring you to a lighter place, a place of clarity and positivity. There's no point in praying if you're just going to go away and then start worrying about the problem again. You have to put the problem on the table and pray and leave it, let go.
That's true.
You
You
really
know,
do. It's a discipline.
when you were talking about, because you're right, there's, especially now, I mean, life has always been hard for every human being, but um, I feel like, especially my generation, I feel like it's harder to be young now than maybe it was before. There's a lot of things to cause one to despair or to lose heart. Um,
Yeah.
you
Yes, I
know,
agree.
what
I think,
for you has been the hardest thing? Well, I don't want to say that. I think a better way would it be, what is something hard in your life that has made life, maybe you saw life differently after, or it was hard to push through.
yeah, I think the hardest time in my life was when I lived in London.
Hmm.
That was a really tough time, really, really tough. Lots of stuff going on there. And because we went to express our music and find a way, an outlet, and had great confidence and wanting to, to share this message, because when you're young, of course, you feel like you're going to change the world with what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
so in love with this concept of what you're doing and feel in some way it's so important, and you're really excited to share this and also influence others to come to this and also unlock their energies in this thing. So you start bands and you travel around. For me, it was with Dead Can Dance with Brendan. And look, we lived in London for, I think it was 5 so, and it was really hard. I tell you, it was hard. To be in London with no money it's not a great place to be. And we really struggled, and we did a lot of very low income kind of little concert tours around Europe that, I mean, we really starved, and we did this for what, 7 years.
Hmm.
And then suddenly one of the pieces of music was picked up. Well, there was two at the same time. There was Yulunga, which was someone asked me to come and sing for a movie called Samsara. Mark Magidson was making a film. It wasn't Samsara, it was Baraka. And he said, will you come and sing over the concentration camps? And I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I can even do something like that. So I said,
Mm.
look, I'll come along. And it was funny actually, because the guy who was composing for him, Michael Stearns, said, I don't have a microphone. I thought, oh, what sort of setup have these people got? It must be terrible. And I said, listen, don't worry, I'm doing some concert to borrow a mic from the crew, that have the gear and whatever the theaters, at the pubs or theaters or whatever we called them back then. And I managed to borrow this Sennheiser drum mic and took it with me, thinking, well, I can use this. I went into this place that looked like something out of Star Trek. It was so modern and curved screens and the whole. I mean, how can this guy not have a microphone? And anyway, I was so blown out because they were doing the film in 75 mil. So anyway, we set up the mic and I improvised over a few pieces for him. And he used another piece that I'd written called Host of the Seraphim. Brendan and I worked on that together. And he wanted to use it in the film. And, he said to me, look, how much do I pay you for coming here and doing this, this work? And I said, well, nothing. I can't charge you for that. I mean, it's just too strange to charge for such a thing. Anyway, so we left it. And then 1 year passed and Brendan and I had been working on an album, Into the Labyrinth, and there was a piece of music on there that we wanted to do a video for. And I'd been in communication. I don't know how I communicated with him because it was before we had emails and things, but must have been by phone. I'd had a couple of phone calls with him and I said, do you want to hear the album? And I somehow got him a copy through the record company. And he loved this one piece, Yulunga. And I said, oh, we want to make a video, but of course, we can't afford to make a video. It's too much money. And he said, look, I've got some footage left over from Baraka. Why don't you come and you have a look at it? And maybe we can put something together. And I said, listen, there's no way we can ever afford to work with someone like you. I mean, it's just never, ever, ever going to happen, And he said, no, no, no. He said, you didn't charge me when you did stuff for me. I won't charge you. Can you believe this?
Wow.
And I know. And I mean, that would have cost, I mean, it was just, you don't even want to think about the amount of money it would have cost to film this footage. He made the most beautiful video and it ended up playing, I think it was something like 6 times a day on the National Geographic channel, I think it was called back then.
Wow.
And yeah, and which broke us, people started to know who we were then from this video. They're like, oh, that's Dead Can Dance here. And then Brendan did a piece called Ubiquitous Mr. Lovegrove, and that got into the charts in America by itself, and which never happens, the records just don't get into it because it was played on college radio, but it ended up getting into the charts. So then people started to know who we were. So that's what happened after 7 years of doing it really tough. And when people say to me, but because music is your life, you don't, I mean, I look back on it as being tough now, but at the time, the music was our saving grace. That was the thing that was our first love. So
Yeah.
although the other side of it was hard, there was the side of it that was blessed. That was the work that we were doing together was just, it was very important to us. And plus we were graced by living around the corner from Limehouse Library in London, which was a beautiful old library. And they had vinyl records of BBC documentaries of geographic music and ethnographic music from all over the world with documentaries, etc. Fantastic books. And it was just a wonderful space to go into. So we had that, which informed a lot of the influences in our music.
Hmm.
Definitely, because we had no money to go anywhere. So, I mean, I was selling plants from door to door. I used to walk to Covent Garden Market. It was a 2-hour walk with a supermarket trolley to buy plants to sell from door to door with a guy who was half Maori, half Aboriginal Chris. He was so sweet, so crazy. But he showed me, I saw him doing it. I said, well, how do you do that? Because we've got no money. We were busking, Robert Perry and I were busking, but that was really hard because it's like mafia in London. If you busk in the train stations and stuff like that, they come along and you have to give them like two-thirds of your money. It's really,
Oh,
and they move you on, you know. And it's because they rent those spaces to other musicians, and it's like mafia, you know. So we
yeah.
sort of plans were good. That came in handy. And you know, so and then we broke in and then we started doing, you know, what you call sort of proper concerts where you're playing in theaters, really nice theaters and touring, you know, where it's, you know, the things are done properly. You know, you're not just living on, you know, bread and cheese for, you know, 3 months, you know. So yeah, it changed. Everything changed. And Brendan moved to Ireland and I moved to Spain. I did a movie there. And then I went to Ireland to work with Brendan for a further something like 5 years, something like that, 4 or 5 years. And then after that, I moved back to Australia and started to work from Australia. And then Michael Mann rang me in Australia, the Michael Mann, the filmmaker, and he'd used some of the music that I'd written from a solo album that I'd done, The Mirror Pool, and he'd used it Heat in a movie that he'd made. And he
Hmm.
rang me because he was doing another film called Insider. And and he said, do you want to do the score for a film? And I said, well, no, of course not. I wouldn't know what to do. It's not. I said, I've always felt that film music is kind of music written for people that don't like music. You know, I don't really connect with it at all, you know, because if you listen to a lot of film music without the picture, some of it's just, I don't know, the life of the work is with the picture, and that's where its power is, you know, that's
I
where its
see.
real
Yeah.
strength. And it's so different to write to the music that you would write normally. It is very different. Unless you have a piece of music that is already written and you put it up against picture and it happens to be a cameo piece that unlocks a certain layer in the film. Most film score is music you wouldn't write as a piece of music because it walks with in a line with picture, atmospheres, vocal, you know, people talking and sounds. And so you're creating a world, an atmosphere, as opposed to a piece of music that you close your eyes and fall into and it unlocks every part of your being. You
Yeah.
understand? So yeah, so that was interesting. So he said, "Do you want to come?" And he said, "Well, look, all I know is that I need you to work on music for this film." And I said, "Well, look, I'm working with Peter Burke at the moment. Let me ask him if he wants to do it?" Because he really liked this piece, Sacrifice, that we'd written, and um, and so he said, "Sure." So I suggested it to Peter, and Peter said, "Sure, let's have a go. You know, let's have a go." And we started to, and it was we had it was very successful for us to do this. We had a great time. It was exhausting, of course, because there's always these terrible deadlines. But that was the foot into Hollywood. We went to Los Angeles after a period of time of writing maybe 60% of the music for the film. And then Michael said, I want you to come over to LA. And he rebuilt my studio in a house in Pasadena. No,
Wow.
in Pacific Palisades, and absolutely everything. So, I mean, the only thing that was missing was a koala in the tree. Honestly, it was like the same studio. But yeah, but people did stuff like that in Hollywood back then. There was a lot of money flowing around. And anyway, so that was it. And then Hans uh Ridley, it was actually Pietro Scalia, the Ridley's film editor, that contacted me and said, would you like to do the score work on the score for Gladiator? And I said to Peter, do you want to work on it? He said, no, I think Peter was kind of, it does burn you out, this whole movie
I'm
thing,
sure.
I often laugh about the fact that if you go to an awards ceremony or something in Los Angeles, just, and people say, well, how do you meet the other composers? You just look for the people that look completely exhausted and jaded. And they're usually the film composers because they're just totally, their lives are just trashed from from doing this work. But yeah, it's hard, especially the bigger films because the deadlines, there's so many politics and so many people involved. And, Hans is amazing that he deals with, I don't know how he does it. He's extraordinary.
Because you've worked
But
with him a couple times, right?
I have, yeah, I've worked with him. I do a lot of concert tours with him too. Um, I'm in the group, the band, they call it the band, Hands Him Alive.
Oh,
Um,
are you coming to DC?
yes,
I'm
yeah, we're
sorry,
coming.
Baltimore.
Yeah, I'm leaving on the 1st of September. I don't think it's exactly in Baltimore, but it would be very close. Um,
Because I was gonna say, if you are, we'll be in that audience.
oh, great. You should come and say hello.
That is so wow. It's so
Yeah.
yeah, wow. That's so cool. I didn't even think of that. I didn't know you were in those. This is
Yeah,
our
no,
first time.
I don't do all of them because sometimes I have to do other stuff. I can't be all the time just, singing the Gladiator piece.
Yeah, sure.
I have other things I need to write. I'll go completely insane. But I love doing them. It's fun. And the people that we work with are very, very sweet. The band is just adorable. I mean, they are so fun. And yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a good vibe. The whole thing is a really good vibe. And Hans is very funny and he's very easy to work with. He's very kind. He really makes you laugh a lot and feel special, you know.
Didn't you do the Son of God soundtrack too?
Yes, I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to say though,
No, I didn't do all of it. I did some of the
yeah,
music in
you did
it.
some of it. Because your voice is very distinct. So I was like, I've heard this
Yeah.
before.
I just didn't
Um,
write the score for this film.
how did you, I mean, for you, like, is there a piece of music you're most proud of? I mean, maybe it's one no one really knows, but I mean, is there something that you feel like I really did, it came out the way I really wanted it to come out?
Um, I don't have those kind of attachments to the work. I can't really, I don't think I've ever done anything that I'm super proud of.
Really?
No,
Wow. I gotta say, it's all beautiful, so you should be, but
it's a different feeling. Like I know sometimes I can't hear it the way, I don't think I can hear it the way other people hear it. I don't think I hear the work the way other people hear it.
hmm.
You know, it's mm, no, it's tricky. I don't know.
Well, you
I don't
did
know.
say, I mean, there's a lot of anxiety that kind of comes up at first because you do have this deadline, you have to make it, and lots of people have to like it for it to be used. Um,
I can see things wrong. I can see things wrong, so I must be able to see things right. But I can see things wrong. There are things that I look at and think, uh, you know, you know. Oh, anyway, I don't know. That one's
do
we
you,
have pride, a sense of pride. I'm proud of my daughter. I'm proud of
yeah,
my daughter. Yeah, I'm very proud of her. I'm proud of the children in my life. And so it's a different sense of, I don't have that sentiment for the music.
what are you proud of about your kids?
I'm proud of the fact that they're emotionally balanced and
Mm,
that they're sound and they're graceful and gracious and
wow,
that they, have empathy and they listen.
wow, yeah.
When people speak, they listen. They don't dominate the conversation. They're very special people. And I think all people are probably very special. It's just that you know your own children more, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
you get to know them. and
What
they are reminding. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, is there something in life that you really enjoy where you feel like you're really resting? I know you mentioned prayer, but is there
Well,
something?
one of my favorite things is holding the people I love in my arms. That's one of my absolute favorite things.
So you like
Uh,
to hug?
yes, I do like holding people I love. I don't like being hugged by strangers. I
I
get
can imagine. I don't think most people do.
it sort of shocks me a little bit when someone grabs me, and it happens often
Oh,
because of the
really?
oh yeah, because the public, and they really mean well. They're not. It's just a little bit, just when you don't see it coming, it's kind of sort of strange, but it's nice. It's nice. There's nothing bad about that. It's a good intention, you know. But there's nothing
Maybe,
nice like into the warm sand of someone's arms that you love. It's
and
such a
that's so true. I've never heard anyone say that though. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of people nowadays that don't really like hugs, actually.
COVID did that.
Oh,
COVID
really?
made it put this kind of strange distance between us where, we thought we were all going to get sick and die if we touched each other and stood next to each other. It's very weird stuff.
It
Thank
was
God all that's
sad.
horrible.
Well, it's
And,
crazy. I was gonna say it was just after COVID had ended, or like it was tapering off, and I was at a playground and I was watching a few kids babysitting, and this 3-year-old child was yelling and screaming, and she didn't know how to play with the other kids. And the mom came
oh,
up to me and she said, I am so sorry. I apologize. She's a COVID baby. So this is her first time like coming out from a
oh no.
playground.
Oh,
I was
that's
shocked. I was like, she's like, she doesn't know how to play with kids. I'm sorry. And I was like, ah. It was so sad.
yeah, that's a real eye opener, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was sad for the kid because I mean, she just
Yeah.
didn't even know how to do basic like sharing, take turns on the swing, whatever it was.
Wow.
Were you in Australia during COVID?
Yes.
Was it as
Yes. So
bad in
oh,
Australia?
and I actually felt really guilty because I really loved just being able to stay home and not have to go anywhere. And it was for me it was different. I mean, because I live in a really special place. I live in one of the oldest gardens in the country, and
Oh,
um
wow.
yeah, it's a very old garden, 1897 it was built. And it's really special. So I mean, my heart went out to the people that were, two families living in a flat somewhere and they couldn't go out. I mean, here, I couldn't complain about any of it, really, because it meant, and I didn't travel, and I travel all the time. So I meant it was, for me, I was able to stay home, which was really nice. I enjoyed being at home. I got to
Well,
do lots of things that I don't normally get to do.
what's your favorite book? Or what's a book you enjoy? I'm trying not to ask favorite questions because I feel like they're very intense.
No, they're not. They're not. I have lots of favorite books. I love poetry. Marina Tsvetaeva is one of my favorite poets. Alejandra
Mm,
Piezanik from Argentina. She's also absolutely astonishing. Baudelaire, Stefan Mallarmé, love his work. Um, Symbolist poets, Akhmatova. Um, I also love the novelist Jacob Huysmans. He
mm.
wrote Against Nature and Lavar. Uh, favorite books. Um, oh gosh, so many books I love. You know, I even loved when I read Pride and Prejudice. I love Pride and Prejudice. I have a very diverse love of music and books. It's not
I'm
just the
hearing
classic,
that. Yeah.
you know. Yeah, Flann O'Brien's Poor Mouth is another book I really, really loved. A very dear book. I love knitting patterns. I love cooking books. My daughter has some beautiful 1950s knitting patterns. The photographs are astonishing in them. It's just lovely to
Wow.
just read and figure out the patterns. Do you knit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. You have to be careful though, because if you use a mouse a lot, in the studio, and I've been using a mouse for like 40 years, so my hands a bit us, I think it's RSI or something it's called. Um, that when you're knitting, you need to, do lots of little hand exercises and things, or you end up really screwing your hands up.
Oh, because of the knitting or the mouse?
Well, a combination of the two.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I notice my right hand is a lot worse than my left, but
And it
I've
just
knitted
cramps up, you're saying?
jumpers. Yeah, it goes sort of stiff and it's sore. It has pain. You get
Mm,
pain in it. I think it's called carpal tunnel. Is it carpal tunnel? Something like that.
I'll have to look it
Um,
up.
yeah,
I've
just
known it.
make sure you do. Because I didn't know this, but someone did tell me that. They said because I've knitted so many jumpers and dresses, and because of course when you're on tour, there's nothing nicer than sitting in the bus or backstage and doing some knitting. It's so beautiful.
Well, Lisa, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'll just ask one more question. What do you think is one word, if you had to use one, that describes who you are?
Uh, well, I don't want to say a disaster because that's putting out something really negative. Um, uh, what could I describe myself as? Um, I know for a fact that I am not practical. I know what I'm not. I don't really know what I am. I can sing and I can write music and I'm very good at cleaning. Um, and I love being in the garden. I love being around children. What am I? I think I'm just a normal, a pretty average person with a desire to do something that helps people escape from the horror of mediocrity.
Hmm.
That
That's
is
a
the word
pretty
for
powerful sentence.
that's pretty much it. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. You're so
Yeah,
sweet.
Lisa, I wanted to thank you so much.
I
This
hope
is
I haven't
so neat
talked too
to
much.
meet you.
All right, darling, you too. Bye bye now.
Bye.